in this episode of the Evolving Media podcast, a podcast where we look at how the world of media is changing and how we as creators, storytellers and producers can adapt in order to thrive, to connect with audiences, to get our stories out there to be heard. In this episode, I'm joined by Bernie Sue. Bernie's been doing projects on emerging platforms for years and years, among them Lizzie Bennett Diaries and Emma Approved, who both won Emmys. Last year, his latest project, Artificial, where he is the co-creator and director, premiered. It's the first drama series to be produced for the live streaming platform Twitch, a platform with close to 20 million daily active users. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how the experiences on Twitch differ from other platforms, how they approach storytelling on this kind of media, what the future might hold, and how we best can start dipping our own toes into the waters of real-time audience interaction. Welcome. Bernie, thank you so much for joining me for this podcast. Let me just start by asking, how is your day today? What's going to be happening in your day?
Well, today I am in the Silicon Valley, so the Cupertino area where all of our iPhones are from. Mm-hmm. And I'm just up here before Sundance, which is starting at the end of the week. So I traveled up here from Los Angeles, which is where I'm based, for a couple of days of meetings before I head to Sundance. So today is a lot of meetings, I'll say, up here in the Bay Area, and tomorrow. And then I'll be going off to nice, warm Park City, Utah, where Wonderful. There will be no snow. I'm lying. There's going to be tons of snow. But I'm excited because I do enjoy winter sports. So it's my one time a year I can go, hey, let's go on the mountain. That'll be fun.
Is there anything in particular you're looking forward to with regards to Sundance?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, the main thing is that the star of my show, Artificial Next, Tiffany Chu, she was the lead character in a movie that's in competition there. And so I'm going to support her as kind of like one of the main reasons why I'm going to be there, as my excuse to go to Sundance. And so to see her do it in her first film, by the way, her first feature film, in her first starring role, is astounding. It's astounding. I mean, obviously I'm biased to think she's very talented because she's a star of my show. To be there for her is going to be amazing. And I'm pretty. Like, I speak at Sundance regularly. Like, I spoke last year on a panel with Steven Soderbergh about the future of television. So, like, I'm part of that community. So I'm happy to be there and happy to just support my friends and colleagues.
So that was actually one of the reasons we're having this chat, because, I mean, I've been following your work for some time now, but I stumbled upon your latest venture, the one that Tiffany is starring in, Artificial Next. And I thought it was extremely interesting, since I've been telling people that they should follow Twitch streamers to see how audience interaction today is handled in a very natural and live way. But could you just explain what Artificial Next is for those who haven't encountered it?
Yeah, sure. So Artificial Next is the name of the channel for the show Artificial, which is the first original scripted live series on Twitch. So to be fair, Twitch has shown a lot of scripted series. They replay Doctor Who and Pokemon and so forth. And they have original shows, which are the live streams or game shows or anything like that. But they haven't done an original scripted live show yet. That's kind of native, that's debuted on Twitch. And so this was the first one. It's a story about a artificial intelligence being played by Tiffany, who is learning how to become human by basically Turing testing through the Twitch audience. So the audience is natively built into the narrative. The show is presented live. Now, not all of it is live, but because we do kind of jump around the timeline of like the past and the present. And it's interactive. So the audience can, if they choose to, interact with the characters, not just Tiffany's character, but the other characters, the creator, her friends, and help sway the show, change plot lines, make decisions. As Jeff Gomez, your previous guest would say, the collective experience. I'm going to give him full credit for that. So that's what the show is. And the show also, though it's live, it's not just live. it uses a lot of Twitch native technology, extensions and so forth to present the experience. So it uses obviously it uses the chat system for interactivity, but it uses a poll system, which is an extension, a custom extension that we built. It uses the bit system, which is the monetization system on Twitch, the kind of tipping system it has. And it uses the subscriber system to also have areas of interactivity within the narrative. So I like to say that this show could not have been done the same way on any other platform because the other platforms don't have the Twitch technologies.
And just to roll back a little bit, if someone doesn't know what Twitch is, then Twitch is a streaming platform with as you were talking about just now, with a very unique feel to it and a unique output and a unique clientele as well, in a sense. And it's predominantly been used. It's predominantly been used by gamers and things like this. But of course, we've also had the Bob Ross marathon and stuff like that. But with Artificial Next being the first drama on the Twitch platform, what made you start looking at Twitch as a platform to tell a story?
Well, I in my kind of work, I like looking at emerging platforms. Like when I did Lizzie Bennett Diaries, 6 years ago, which was kind of my most famous work, probably most well-known piece of work. And back then, YouTube was really seen as an emerging platform. And I don't think YouTube is an emerging platform, where it's kind of a platform that everybody knows about. And so looking at Twitch, like I had seen this rise. He got bought by Amazon a couple years ago, and it started creating, like you said, these kind of cultural moments. The Bob Ross marathon, the Drake Ninja stream, type of things that came up, and I saw these kind of very eccentric experiences on Twitch that were unique to Twitch, like Twitch plays Pokemon, where the audience actually controlled the stream by doing. So these things were like very just like cute in a very fun ways that tickled my creative bone. And so I set it upon myself to figure out a way to work within the ecosystem of Twitch and to present a Twitch native story. And so much like a Lizzie Bennett Diaries before it, when Lizzie Bennett Diaries debuted on YouTube, it might have opened as the biggest hit, but it opened as this very unique experience where even the YouTubers around that I've met who knew about the show were like, there's nothing like it. I mean, they didn't say this is going to be the first Emmy winner, which it was, or things that it has now as a legacy, but they all said like there's nothing like it. And it feels like a show that could only be on YouTube, which, I'd say at the time it was the only way it was. And so this show, like that, is in its own way, it could only be on Twitch. It feels like a unique Twitch experience, but it's unique in the sense that people who are active Twitch users come onto the show and they're still a little confused because it looks like a show, because we produce it like a show. It's like, it's lit like a show. It's a well-produced video narrative like any other TV show, right? But it has these live elements where the character suddenly looks on the screen and like calls out names on the stream. And the people in the stream are like, what? Wait, what? Like this isn't a Doctor Who marathon or anything like that. Or so that's the idea. Like I just, me as a creator, just not to tell my whole creative story, I just love working with new technologies, new platforms that can have a mass audience.
So you said that the Twitch audience was bemused and shocked by the production value and the connection that made it into a Twitch drama, so to speak. Then what were the reactions in the long run? Because from what I've known of the Twitch audience, they can be quite fickle and quite, they're not afraid to speak their mind, so to say, in the least. So how was it approached? What was the reactions to it?
Well, so, I mean, there was a lot of things we weren't surprised about. So sure, you're correct. The Twitch audience is very opinionated, we'll say. But there's the ones that, of course, there's lewd comments that you see, whether they be sexist or whatever. I mean, we get those. We take care of those through moderation comments and so forth. So there's that. The ones that I found really funny and really kind of like commentary of our creative culture is that people will watch it and they'll yell out that's fake. Okay, so it's like it's fake. She's not a real robot or whatever it is, right? Well, it's like it's a show, and I go the stream title literally says sci-fi series. Like it says sci-fi series in the title. And the first description is, story about a blah, 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 who played by this, played by this person. So they're like yelling it's fake. So the equivalent analogy that I thought of was that if you went to a movie theater, were watching Avengers, and then saw a superpower and started yelling at the screen in the middle of the theater saying it's fake. And I'm like, huh, like that's not how that works. Like, that's not how we do it. And I mean, I don't blame them. They feel like they've debunked something, like that we were trying to be a hoax, and we're not trying to be a hoax. We're being very authentic to that we're a show, and that we're just presenting a magic trick, we'll say. And like any magic trick, it's fake. You know in your heart it's fake, right? And you're not yelling at the magician it's fake. You're just kind of like, amazed or not. You're watching the show happen. But I think that what we do is when a comment or something, which there are many, try to break our story, we just have to ignore them. It's the same thing we did with Lizzie Bennett Diaries, by the way. Like the same type of thing we did with that social media, transmedia experience, is that if something came in that broke the story, we would have to ignore it. Like you like to say, you can't tell Luke Skywalker who his father is in the first 5 minutes of Star Wars if you made that interactive, because that would break the story. Like you could.
Yeah, and if you would, if you would allow it, someone would tell it in the first 5 minutes. Of course, I mean that's humanity.
Yeah, exactly. So that we are like to say in like my team, my edicts to my team is I say our story comes first, but we are interactive as much as we can. And when any opportunity we can build an audience into the show, we'll probably do it.
What were your expectations? What opportunities did you feel that Twitch would give you in comparison to other platforms? And did it come up to your expectations for it?
Oh, that's tricky, because when you're doing something that's never really been done before, you really don't have any expectations, because like there's no data. It's like, our first stream, I think we didn't have any promotion to it as far as like leading up. We launched, Twitch promoted it day of, and I think we had I want to say around 8,000 to 10,000 concurrent streams and 200,000, a little less than 200,000 total views on the stream. And I go, is that good? Yeah, I don't know if that's, I mean, it sounds good, but I don't know if that's good because I have nothing to compare it to, right? Like I can't say, oh, it's 1/10 of what Ninja gets on his stream. It's like, but can we really compare ourselves to Ninja, the top streamer in the world? Like, is that fair to Ninja, or fair to us to say that we're apples and apples? So Twitch has said that they were very happy because their non-gaming content doesn't do as well as our numbers do. So they're very happy with those numbers. So I don't have any expectations there. In the narrative side, the storytelling side, I guess the expectation was like for the audience is like how much they would jump in right away. And I think they surprised me about how much they wanted to. So I think what it did is it pushed us more. So our first episode very much sets up the world, but it's really not that interactive. Like there's a couple areas of people asking questions and we do a poll at the end, but it kind of takes a while to get us there. It's not until like episode 2 through 5 where we start really pushing of like, okay, let's do more. Let's acknowledge the audience more. Let's add more features. Let's do these things. And that's been really fun to see the audience kind of push and push and push. And that's, I think, natural when you're building an audience, when you get those diehards, those great fans that are super supportive, who really believe in the narrative you're saying or you're telling. Yeah, it's tricky because because you haven't done it before, you have no data, you have nothing to compare it to. So yeah, I mean, I'm generally the numbers, pretty happy. The numbers sound great to me, and we achieved kind of these goals that we decided to hit. It's like, you know what, let's try to get 2 million total views over the season. Let's try to do average somewhere to keep that number consistent, be 8 to 10 concurrent, hit the 10K concurrent through the season. So we did pretty good on those numbers. We did hit 2 million for sure. And then of course comments, during the streams, our comments are crazy, just insane. So if you wanted to see something nuts, I mean, typically if you say, I want to watch the show now, as to your listeners, you may go to YouTube and watch the VOD file, the replay, or even the VOD on Twitch. But I would recommend going to watch the broadcast replays, because then you have the chat going along with it, and those are hilarious. Like those, you see the freneticness of a poll comes up and everybody starts spamming the chat. Vote this, vote that. You guys are tools, whatever. Like, just people are yelling stuff all the time. We hate this, we love this, blah 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 blah. It's a fun ride. It's a fun ride.
As you were talking about how people were interacting on the Twitch streams, etc. I mean, is this the future? Because you've been doing these experimental stuff, on new platforms. So looking back and looking forward, with what I feel is an important part, as people have been saying, that it's no longer like a one-way broadcast. It's a conversation between the producer and the production and the audience. So from your point of view, how has audience interaction changed over the past years, and how do you feel it will be changing?
I'm very much in the Jeff Gomez camp of collective narrative. I'm like right there with him. So I when he talks about it, I've seen him talk about it. I've read this stuff, and I believe it pretty much fully. I don't want to say 100% because I'll have to go through and nitpick if I believe that one or the other one. But like largely, I believe it. Like the way he's presenting it, and so my work right now focuses on that kind of area. And I'll be very specific about this because there are a lot of things when people say, oh, you're doing interactive storytelling. Are you Bandersnatch on Netflix? Are you Choose Your Adventure? And I go defiantly, no, we are not that. Bandersnatch is a singular experience. I mean, yes, you could watch it with 20 people and together and have a group experience with that way. Sure, we can compare notes and discuss it, and hopefully we have good experiences. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's a singular experience. It's not a collective experience, as Mr. Gomez would say. What I do now, and what I did before, was be collective, which was just to bring the entire audience into it, if they choose to. And you as an audience, we all have the same experience, pretty largely. We see the same experience. But if you choose to interact, you can. If you don't want to interact, you don't have to. And you should still have a good experience, a good story being told. So if we're both watching the live stream or Artificial and we're watching the same show, and hopefully we like the show, I'm not saying you guaranteed to like the show, it's your own taste. You can interact and you can vote and ask Sophie questions and she may respond to you. And I can just sit there and just watch the show and I can still enjoy the show and you'll enjoy the show. And sure, I can say, oh, look, Simon's being called out to ask a question. So you're in the experience, I'm watching the experience, and we're both having part of the same story. So looking at it from largely, again, from the collective narrative kind of ethos, is that I think we grew up in an era where we watched Luke Skywalker blow up the Death Star. And I believe now, like defiantly with my work, that I want to create a story where we help Luke Skywalker blow up the Death Star, if you choose to want to help.
That makes total sense. And I think that sums up what the collective narrative, the collective journey is all about. It's us being a part of the narrative. And I think it gives so much more just being a part of a Twitch chat together with a lot of other people, especially, when you just follow along some gamer's stream and see how basically it's a collective cheering him on and being and experiencing what he's experiencing in the game at the same time and together. So I feel that one, if you can experience that and still have the full production value of a blockbuster movie production or whatever you want to call it, then why would you not? Why would you choose something where you don't get that feeling? I think it has a strong pull to it.
I'm very biasedly agree with that. So that's just like my entire life work at the moment is that. And I've met fans of the show. We were at TwitchCon last year, and there were fans of the show who were watching every episode. I know their fan name. They were in the chat. They asked a lot of questions. They were subscribers and shook their hand, gave them a hug, blah blah blah. And obviously very valuable to us as far as storytellers because they're very much in there with us. They're helping to tell our story. So I'm with you. And then I met people who I didn't know were fans at all, who went like, yeah, I watched the entire show, but I never watched an episode live. I only watched it on replay because, I wasn't available at the time, but I love it. And they're like, really? And so even without the live experience, you're enjoying it. And they went, yeah. So they would break down certain moments and yeah. So when this happened, what'd you guys do there? What was that like in the back? And oh, wow. Okay.
Wow.
Let remember that. So I look at it as, it's as if you're even like say, this is a podcast. So you can record a live podcast and you can open up that live element to the audience and, record it live with a stream and like on Twitch, which people do, and have the audience be part of the podcast. But you can also just listen to the podcast, on your drive to work at a normal time where normally people listen to the podcast, and you still have a good experience. You just didn't get a chance to interact and play with it. You just got to see it later. So I like to think that our generation, we grew up with this kind of lean back experience where we didn't really have the ability to lean in to interact. Yeah. We had to read a book, we had to watch a movie, we had to, that type of thing. And now with the iPhone generation, the connected generation, whatever, adjective you want to add up in front of it, where basically everyone who's an adult over the age of 20 doesn't know a world without an iPhone will want to touch their stories, or at least touch them, interact with them in some way. And we know this with like seeing experiences with toddlers walking up to big screen TVs and swiping on them, thinking they're big touch screens. My favorite anecdote, I don't have any children, but I was talking to some young mothers and I asked them, it's like, hey, so when you read a book to your child, do they ever pinch the pages of the book to make the pictures bigger? And they go like, yeah, they do. And it's like, yeah. This is what we're programming to. The future storytellers are programmed to that generation. And so what is that generation when they get up to, prime demographic age or whatever you want to call it? What are they going to expect from the narratives? Are they going to be totally satisfied by just sitting back and watching a movie? I mean, I'm not saying movies are going away. It's just like, books didn't go away and newspapers didn't go away and radio didn't go away. It just evolves.
One final question, Bernie. Since this podcast is geared towards, producers, creators, people who are active in the field of making media content, and most of them don't have the head start that you're having when it comes to working with new technologies, engaging audiences, etc. If you could give some advice to people starting out, trying to get to grips with engaging with audiences, what would you say are the best places to start, and how do you start?
Well, I mean, this is going to be just because this is how I do it, is I just start tinkering in new platforms. So in preparing to do Artificial, as an example, I started streaming myself playing a video game that was playing, just to see what it was like. And I would get 3 watchers, and one of them would be my sister or something like that. But it was just the feel of it. It was just kind of the understanding of the workflow of that. And it's a little different than, I've been writing screenplays and I've been directing web series for, a decade almost now. So I'm very familiar with that. And so live streaming is still kind of this foreign beast to me. I mean, I'm far more familiar with it now, obviously, by doing a massive show like Artificial was. So if you're looking at new platforms, you're looking at new areas, I think you have to you have to start tinkering, and it's okay to practice with small things. And I don't like the idea of people just kind of opening up in a piece of indie work with no practice. It's kind of like you're playing a big game in sports without practicing. I don't like that, and I know people do it. And if they do it, they do it. It's a free society. They can do whatever they want, and that's fine. But I like to look at it as you got to tinker and think about things, and you think about how to play with platforms, and you see what's working, and you see what's working in the narrative storytelling. Just because someone's doing a cooking show online or playing a video game online doesn't mean they're not storytelling. They're still storytelling, and they're telling stories. So what about their methods or their how they design their format do you like, and you think it can work for you? So that's one thing I would look at. And the second thing I would look at is, because a lot of the kind of traditional storytellers are trained this very passive experience. They learn how to write a short story, they learn how to write a screenplay, and they learn how to direct a movie. Okay, these are not interactive experiences, right? They're creating very, very passive linear experiences for the story consumer. Yeah. And what I'll say is that you have to kind of take yourself out of that mold a bit. And you got to look at it more like a conversation. So you and I have a conversation, and we are pivoting the conversation based on the reactions of each other. If you say, yeah, like you just did, or you nod, or the silence, or this, it's awkward, then one of us will pivot or adjust, and then we'll adjust again. Yeah. We're still telling a story, and literally this podcast. So like we're still telling the story, but it is interactive for you and I, right? Like it's not like my story or just your story. You're trying to tell a story and I'm telling a story, and ideally we're trying to tell a very similar story here so we have a good conversation.
Yeah.
So I think that's one way to kind of alter your mindset. It's very macro in the sense of from a storyteller perspective. And then the last thing I'll say, I know I'm a little long-winded here, is this one I tell everybody. Okay. So it took me a while to figure this one out. People ask me, because again, trained screenwriter, directing, filmmaking, et cetera, and they go like, what changed? Like, how did you change? What's the difference between your mindset and the others? And I go, as a storyteller, I think it's actually one simple thing. It's that traditional storytellers tell the narrative from the idea of the storyteller. They're like, it's my story, it's my movie, it's my screenplay, it's my art. Yeah, screw you if you don't like it or whatever. That's kind of the auteur thinking, and that's fine. I'm not knocking it. There are some great auteurs there, and they do some amazing work. So I'm not saying that's a bad way of thinking. It's just not the way I think. I am more of a storyteller that looks at it from the story consumer's perspective, through the user experience perspective, and so I'm thinking of it the point of view from the listener, the watcher, the reader, and what are they consuming, and how is it good for them? Is it work? Is it a good user experience for them? Is it a good story experience for them? If not, then I think my story doesn't matter. If it's a bad story experience, they're not going to be able to consume it. I mean, I'm sure you've seen tons of these experimental interactive experiences that sound like really good ideas, right? Yeah. And you experience them, and you're like, this is weird.
This is like, strange. What am I doing?
Yeah, what am I doing? I don't understand. Like, I want to interact. I'm not sure how. It's bad UI, right? And I'm not saying my work is great UI. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying my work is trying to be great UI, and whether it achieves that or not is up to you to say. Like, there are a lot of things about Lizzie Bennett Diaries that had great user experiences, and a lot of things that didn't quite work as well. And same with Emma Approved, and same with Artificial. Like, there are things where I say for Artificial, I go like, okay, if we're bringing this thing back, it's got to be a way better experience. We're just not going to continue the story and have the exact same mechanisms again. That is not how this show should come back. This should come back with a whole new system, like a better poll, a better like live ecosystem. Everything should be better. So I like to yell. I like to speak to my team and say, this should be a version 2.0. This shouldn't be a season 2. It should continue the story, sure, but it should be a version 2. It should have better interactive experiences than what we already did last year.
But if you compare it to, say, the user-centered design principles, the user experience principles of, for instance, making an app or a website, when you're talking about storytelling and you're talking about content, media content, which are drama, for instance, such as Artificial Next, then you're looking at a totally different level, right? It's because the variables are so different, and also people are used to apps and websites being in one way, but they are used to drama being in quite another way. And when you start mixing with that, there are a lot of other obstacles you're up against, right?
Of course. This is like, I mean, it's a basic thing with, like, people talk about online video, right? Web series, which is something, I'm very familiar with. And people go, oh, is it just like a movie? It's like, no, it's not. In a movie, you're not worried about an audience getting a notification like on their screen, literally on the screen you're watching your screen on, to take you away, or 5 different windows open, or text messages, or whatever. And when you're doing a movie, you're pretty confident that they're going to send their ass in that theater and sit through 2 minutes of credits in the beginning of the movie. I mean, can you imagine that on online video?
Not likely, no.
No, not likely. But in a movie theater, we're just like, yeah, we accept that because, we're committed. We've bought the ticket, popcorn's in our hand, we've sat down, the theater's dark, and, you're going to roll 2 minutes of credits. I may not be that happy about the 2 minutes of credits, but this movie better be damn good. And we'll let it rock. But in an online video, it's different. So that's part of it. So that's why a Lizzie Bennett Diaries and Artificial, they're designed for the online experiences, that they're designed to be like Lizzie the episodes are so super short, right? They're really short. They're very fast. Yeah. So if I only need you for 3 minutes, you just give me 3 minutes. You want to watch it on your lunch break, in the bathroom, whatever you want to do, just, get it, knock it out, good to go. Artificial, again, Twitch is an experience. It's a long experience. Live streams are long. There are very few live streams that are shorter than 30 minutes. So we play it that way, but we also design it to be, if you're not actually watching the screen, you can still listen and just hear the conversation and still theoretically have a good experience there. So that's taking away all the technology. That's taking away all the polling system and the chat system and all that. Of course, we want you to be super involved in paying attention to every detail, but I can't assume that you will, and I don't want to punish you for not being that. And that's the thing. That's what my ethos is. It's like all my experiences, all the stories that I generally tell, will basically my thought process is, you do not have to interact with it, and you should still get a good story experiences if you're paying attention. And if you're not paying attention, then I didn't give you a good story experiences. That's on me. That's on my team, my people, and my work. And to say that you because you clicked on a link to watch my show, that you owe me to sit through the whole stream dedicated without interruption, that's ridiculous. As a storyteller that way, to me.
Absolutely. And Bernie, I could talk about this all day, I guess, but I think we'll have to call it quits now for this time, for this podcast. Thank you ever so much for agreeing to participate. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Well, thank you, Simon. And I just want to say that it's an honor. I have a lot of respect for the previous guests that you've had. I've learned a lot from them. and their past works and their teachings and their lectures and their talks and so forth.
So happy to have you, and I hope I'll have you back on the podcast in the future. It would be great.
I'd love to be back. Let me know. You let me know.
And you
Thanks,
have a great time at Sundance.
Oh, thank you. I'll stay warm for you. I'm sure. I'm sure it's super warm over where you are.
I think it was minus 18 degrees Celsius when I woke up this morning, but it's gonna get colder. So
my God.
There we are. Have a good time. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.